Well, that was another massive weekend of football. Round 13 is a wrap. There was 8 games this weekend. We're going to run through them all the winners, all the losers, best players, everything you need to know that happened on the weekend right here. All Aussie Rules Football Podcast.
Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 38 of season 2025, and today we're doing a round 13 review. There was 8 matches across the long weekend. We're going to be going into them all, having a look at the best teams, all the reasons for winning, best players, all of that stuff. So stick around. I hope you enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new here, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or over on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you give the podcast a rating. If you haven't been to the YouTube, go check that out as well. Hit the sub button and the noti bell. Plenty of videos go live every week, especially at the moment we do mid-season previews for every team when they have their bye. So go check them out. Let's jump into the footy. Just a little side note. One game hasn't been played yet at time of this part of the recording, but I'm doing the first bit and then I'll record the last game after the Collingwood game finishes. Collingwood-Melbourne this afternoon. So let's do the first 7 and then you'll see a little bit of a break and it'll probably be dark outside as I record the final bit. Let's jump into it. Thursday night footy started with Bulldogs Hawthorn. Feels like a week ago already that this was on. It's not that far from a week ago, to be fair, but it feels like forever ago. Marvel Stadium, Thursday night football. Bulldogs 8-11-59, Hawthorn 12-9-81. Hawks get a much needed win after a couple losses. 3 losses in a row, I think. They needed this win and they certainly got it. It was a game that they controlled the scoreboard the whole way through, pretty much from start to finish. They certainly led this game. It started really well in the first quarter of the Hawks. The Bulldogs pegged them back a couple times, got within 10 points in the second quarter. Could never break it under 2 goals again after that point, though. And, yeah, Hawthorn got the win. Much needed win for them. Bulldogs coming out of the bye maybe looked a little bit lacklustre. Yeah, that pretty much sums up the scoreboard side of things. We'll jump into some of the team stats for this game. It was a game that Hawthorn controlled pretty much mostly, as you can see, team ratings that we do. That rates every player from the game and gives the team a rating. Hawthorn dominated it. They dominated the stat sheet a lot across the board. Their disposal efficiency was way above Bulldogs. Bulldogs at just 68.1%, which is pretty low, especially under the roof at Marvel. When you compare that to Hawthorn, who went at 73%, major factor right there why this game ended up with the result that it did. Inside 50s controlled by Hawthorn as well, plus 15, 58-43. Forward half ground possession actually wasn't that much dissimilar. Hawthorn only just won it by like 0.1%, so even though they didn't dominate the full ground territory for the whole match, they certainly dominated the inside 50 part of it, which is probably the most important in some ways. Contested footy was pretty level peggings. Intercepts, once again, pretty similar. Bulldogs did dominate the clearances, plus 6 in that regard, but turning it into scores was a completely different kettle of fish. Just 19 shots for the Bulldogs for the game compared to the 25 that the Hawks had. Pretty much sums up everything you need to know about this game. It probably could have been closer if Bulldogs were a little bit more efficient at their shooting, but at the same time, Hawthorn deserved winners, I think, when you look at it. Ball movement. Hawthorn's ball movement was pretty good, pretty solid from defensive 50 to forward 50. Pretty good at getting a shot most of the time. They certainly moved the ball a lot better than the Bulldogs in this game. In terms of scoring, it was not too much dissimilar from the stoppages. However, Bulldogs were wasteful, 4-7. They did win the clearance count for the day, so they should have won the scoring, but they didn't. 34-31, they lost that. But the turnover game, where Hawthorn did control that portion of the game, they also scored really well. 7-5-47 to just 28 from the Bulldogs is a very low number, especially for the Bulldogs. In terms of transition and score origin, it was forward half for Hawthorn. 29-10 was the difference, as well as centre bounce 19-9. So those are the areas that the Hawthorn team really came to play in this game. whereas the Bulldogs just didn't really have it. Let's be completely honest. Key things to players to take out of this game: Mabo Charles kicked 4 goals, was really efficient down forward. Didn't have a heap of the ball, just the 11 touches, but when he had it, he really made use of it. In terms of ball winners, there was a lot that got mid to high 20s. No one outstanding in that, I don't think. Clearance counts, 10 for Jai Newcomb, really stood out in this game, and that's about it. If we look at the MVP votes, if you're new around here, every game we do MVP votes for the top 5 players on each team. The losing team gets 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for their top 5, and the winning team gets 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. So winning team gets double the points of the losing team. Winning team in this one, Lloyd Meek got the highest rating on the ground, so he gets the 10, Josh Ward 8, Jai Newcomb 6, Charles gets the 4, and Josh Weddle gets 2. For the Bulldogs, Ed Richards continues his fine form this season. He's been outstanding. He gets 5 here. Bailey Dale gets 4 for his 30-odd touches. Tim English gets 3. Matthew Kennedy has had a great first season at the Doggies. He gets 2. And Marcus Bontempelli sneaks into the 1 spot. Brownlow votes could go to a lot of players. I think Jai Newcomb was best on ground, in my opinion. He gets the 3. Charles gets 2 for 4 goals in a pretty low-scoring game. His efficiency up forward was certainly important for the Hawks in this one. And Ed Richards was clearly the Doggies' best player again, as he has been the last few weeks, and I think he deserves a 1 vote here. 25 touches, a goal, 7 tackles, 5 clearances. He was very important in keeping the Dogs within striking range deep into this game. So we'll jump into game number 2. Sorry about the light outside. I don't usually record during the daytime. Game number 2 it was Adelaide-Brisbane. This was a weird game, let's be honest. It wasn't a bad game. It was one of the best of the weekend. But the Crows get the 5-point win at Adelaide Oval over a very inefficient Brisbane Lions in the forward line. They win at 10-8-68 to 8-15. Yes, you heard that right, 8-15-63. Not the first... Well, was the first, but not the last team this weekend to kick very poorly in front of goal, and that cost them the game. If you look at the team ratings on the screen, if you're not watching the screen, I'll read them out. But Adelaide was 43.97, Brisbane 45.35. So Brisbane actually rated slightly above Adelaide here, so they'll be kicking themselves. I know both coaches probably think they deserved the win. We heard that in the press conferences after the game. I think you can certainly make a statement, a case for Brisbane being very much the better team here, but just wasteful. You can say the same about Adelaide because they did what you need to do in a game, and that was convert your shots into goals. Another game that was low scoring. There's been plenty of that this weekend. First quarter, pretty close. Brisbane kicked a couple late, and they held that lead all the way through. 3-quarter time, they looked like they were safely in front and going to win this one. And the funny thing is, the inefficiency in front of goal really swung in this game. Adelaide went 0-6 in the first quarter. After that point, kicked 10 goals too. Brisbane were 8-7 at 3-quarter time and kicked 0-8 in that last quarter, and also a couple out on the fulls. So a really weird sort of game in the way that it flowed that way. But Adelaide turned on the Jets early in the final quarter, kicked 3 goals in the first 5 minutes. Philthorpe, Keys and Dawson. Then it steadied a bit before goals to Rochelle and Keys gave Adelaide that little boost, and then Brisbane just peppered the forward line, peppered the shots on goal, but just couldn't convert, and Adelaide held on for a very important home win, and yeah, they'll be absolutely stoked with that. Massive win for their season, massive win for this club. Having a look at some of the team stats, I suppose, for this game, the important stuff from it, things that stand out. Disposal efficiency was dead level for both teams, basically, so nothing too dissimilar there. Inside 50s, plus 13 for Brisbane. That is how they play football, week in, week out. They get a lot of forward 50 entries. Their efficiency last year and this year going forward, not spectacular. They did tidy it up in the second half of last year, whereas they've gone back to that this year. I think it's got a lot to do with the changing of the forward line. Obviously, Danaher going out trying to find that replacement. At the moment, it's not working spectacularly. They had an extra 74 disposals in this game, plus 13 in contested possessions for Brisbane. So they also controlled the uncontested football. High intercept game. Clearances were massively in favour of Brisbane, plus 19. So they really controlled that first ball out of contest. They really controlled getting the ball. But the difference here was the wastefulness. Both teams had a lot of intercepts, but it was just the fact that Brisbane couldn't convert when they finally got it forward and having shots at goal. Forward half, it was 55% basically in the forward half for Brisbane. So they did control the ground really well for most of the match. They had an extra 9 shots in this match, 29-20. So that tells you everything you need to know here. Plus 9 shots and you lose by 5 points. You only got yourself to blame. Expected score, as you would expect from that, Brisbane were the expected winners by probably 5 goals. So this is one that they let slip, and Adelaide absolutely will be loving the fact that they won this one, because that's one in the bag that they perhaps maybe they will consider they deserved it, but at the same time they were probably lucky in some ways. Scoring across the board was pretty similar, from stoppage 28-31 in favour of Brisbane, but as I said before, Brisbane dominated clearances by plus 19, so to only put plus 3 points on the opposition there, that's a massive difference right there. Turnover 34 for Adelaide, 31 for Brisbane. Both teams had similar turnover numbers, scoring similar. Once again, Brisbane pretty inefficient. Defensive half is where Adelaide controlled this game. 38 points from 6 goals 2 to 1 goal 7. So both teams had 8 scores from the defensive half. One team gets 38, Brisbane gets 13. That's a massive difference. Forward half was 30-43. And pretty much no scoring from the centre bounce in this game. Just 1 goal 1 for Brisbane, 0-0 for Adelaide. It was slippery, but just some weird little factors there. Some key players, I guess, key numbers from the game. 3 goals to Rochelle and Keys, so the small forwards for Adelaide really did control this one. Brisbane had Rayner and Charlie Cameron kick 2 goals each, so theirs did okay as well. But yeah, that sums that up. Will Ashcroft had 31 touches. He led the disposal count. Big tackle numbers for Adelaide. Big tackle numbers. 13 Saligo, 11 Jordan Dawson. So they're 2 main midfielders so far this year, outside of Isaac Rankin, combined for 24 tackles. 8 to Mitchell Hinge as well. Clearance numbers dominated by Brisbane. No surprise there. Adelaide's leading clearance getter got 4. Brisbane had 5 players get more than that in terms of clearances. Nothing too special in the rest of that. So MVP votes for the winning team. Ben Keys gets the 10. He was outstanding in this game. Saligo in the midfield was great. Jordan Dawson really moved into the game well. Took a really good contested mark in the last quarter, which he converted into a goal. Rory Laird was good off the back flank. And Isaac Rankin gets the 2. For the Brisbane Lions, surprisingly, Darcy Fort gets number 1 player on the ground. Had a lot to do with his battle with Riley O'Brien. Both had massive hit-out numbers, obviously, wet weather footy, but 7 clearances as well for Darcy Fort. So he did well in that regard. 5 votes, 4 for Dunkley, 3 for Will Ashcroft, 2 for Cam Rayner, and Lockie Neal gets the 1. Brownlow votes, I think you go Ben Keys, 3 votes in all honesty. I think he was outstanding. In the end, he ended up with 20 touches, 3 goals, 3 clearances, a goal assist, 5 tackles. He was very important in this win. Will Ashcroft, I think, was Brisbane's best player. He gets 2. And 1 vote to Jake Saligo for his efforts in the midfield in this one. We'll move into Saturday football. Led off with Richmond, Sydney, and this game was not the most exciting to watch. You're going to get this theme for a fair chunk of this weekend, because let's be honest, it was not the greatest weekend of football that we've ever seen. But that's okay. Sometimes that happens. Richmond, 4 goals 12. Very poor kicking. 36. Didn't cost them the game, but it probably cost them a chance at being a little bit closer. 11-14, 80 for Sydney. MCG, Saturday afternoon football. the first half was an absolute slog to get through, let's be fair. For the first quarter and a half, it was basically 3 goals, 5 or 6 for Richmond to 2 goals, 6 for Sydney. So it was close. Richmond were in front, but it was an absolute slog. Sydney managed to kick 3 quick ones through the middle part of the second quarter. Heaney, Jordan, Hayward got them on the board, gave them a 14-point lead into halftime, and then they came out of the half and absolutely controlled the game from then on, getting goals from some talls, from some mids, and really extended that lead out by 40 points by three-quarter time. Richmond didn't kick a goal after the 18-minute mark of the first quarter, all the way through until the 22nd minute mark of the final quarter. So basically went 3 full quarters without a goal. It's a long time in football to not score a goal. They did kick some points in that time, obviously quite a lot of points, but and vice versa. On the other side of the fence, Sydney kicked 10 of their goals. 10 out of their 11 goals in that time. So it was a slog. Richmond did not play well. If you look at the team ratings overall, 36.51 is one of the lowest scores of the year so far in terms of team rating. That was Richmond in this one. On the other side of the fence, 48.33 is actually like Sydney's top 3 performance of the season. So they actually rated pretty well. Even though they didn't look that fantastic in the first quarter and a half, they certainly dominated the game in the second half of this one. Looking at some key stats, no surprise, disposals was controlled by Sydney, plus 80, plus 6% in disposal efficiency, controlled the ground, plus 23 in inside 50s in this game. Ground forward half was basically 60% for Sydney, so it was just stuck in their forward half for massive chunks of this game. Contested footy went the way of Sydney, as did uncontested footy. Intercepts, I mean, not that surprising when you look at the numbers that Sydney had, that they would lose the intercept counts, so they did turn it over a bit more than Richmond. That's something that Richmond have actually been really good at this season, is not turning it over that much. For a team that has a lot of young players, that is probably one of their biggest positives so far this year, is the fact that they don't turn it over as much as other teams, especially young teams. 26 shots to 19 in favour of Sydney, so they certainly had more of the ball going towards their goals. Expected winners by about 20-30 points, so they did win by more than that, due mainly to the fact that Richmond kicked really poorly in front of goal. 2 goals from kicking from Sydney, so that just tells you how well they were moving the ball from their back line to their forward line. Over 32% of the time from D50 to forward 50 is a really high percentage, and 43% for defensive half to forward 50. They were transitioning the ball really easily, especially in that second half. Richmond didn't have much of a way to stop them. Scoring from stoppage 30 to 22, so not that massive when you consider the clearance difference. Turnover numbers 38 to 14. So even though Richmond had a lot more intercepts, they did not turn it into goals. 1 goal 8 they scored, whereas Sydney were 5 goals 8. Defensive half, as I said, they transitioned the ball really well, Sydney, and that was their best part of their game here. 39 they scored from the defensive half to 0-5 for Richmond. Forward half, they also won that battle 33 to 25. So it was a game that was really well controlled by Sydney. They did what they needed to. They've got a lot of work to do to make up for their really slow start to their season. This was just against Richmond, so you can't read too much into it. They need to do this sort of performance against a better team. But it was at least a positive sign that they managed to control this game pretty much all the way through that second half and just have the game completely on their terms. Some key numbers in this one. 3 goals, James Jordan, 2 for Chad Warner, 2 for Seth Campbell for Richmond, 34 touches for Nick Blakey, the only person that went over 25. There was 3 players on 25 disposals, but Nick Blakey had 34, so it just tells you how much of the football he had, and 31 kicks with just 3 handballs. lot of marks for Sydney. They did control the uncontested side of the game. 14 tackles for Rowbottom. Hit-outs, Brodie Grundy dominated the ruck contest over Toby Nankervis. Clearance game, no one too outstanding in that. 916 metres gained for Nick Blakey, as well as 2 goal assists. He was outstanding. Isaac Heaney got 1 goal and 3 goal assists. We move into MVP votes. The winning team, Brodie Grundy rated the highest. He gets 10. Unlucky for Nick Blakey because he was absolutely outstanding. As I said, 34 touches, 10 marks, 916 metres gained, 2 goal assists. He was fantastic. Isaac Heaney gets the 6, played one of his better games of the year, 25 touches and a goal. Angus Sheldrick's putting in some good games of recent. He was good here, 19 touches, 7 tackles. Callum Mills played his best game across last year and this year. I know he's missed a lot of football in that time, but he was really good in this one. He had 25 touches and 3 clearances, as well as 374 metres gained. For the losing team, Dion Presti has come in and been Richmond's best 2 weeks in a row in his only 2 games this season, so a welcome addition into the team he has been. Tim Taranto's put together some really good football. After a couple slow games to start the season, he's really flying now. He's been in their top 3 or 4 most weeks over the last 10 or so games. Toby Nankervis, he gets 3. He was beaten in the ruck duel by Brodie Grundy, but he was still one of Richmond's better players in terms of numbers. Ben Miller was really good in the backline. He gets 2. And Kane McCuffley, he's been really good as a young player. I think he's got a lot of potential in the future, so watch out for him in coming years as this team develops. Brownlow votes, I think Nick Blakey has to get the 3. He was outstanding, had so much of the football compared to everybody else on the ground. 2 to Brodie Grundy, he was outstanding in the ruck, absolutely won that contest. And Isaac Heaney for his 25 touches and a goal, as well as 3 goal assists. He could get 3, he could get 2, he could get 1. But I think that's the way that I think it deserves to go. 3 Blakey, 2 Grundy, 1 Isaac Heaney. Moving on to the next game, and it was Geelong Gold Coast, another wet game, another low scoring game, very heavy stoppage game throughout this one, and it didn't always look like it was going to be a massive win. It looked pretty close. Halfway through the third quarter, it was within a kick. Geelong did manage to kick the last 2 goals of the third quarter, which gave them a little bit of a break, plus 16 points at 3-quarter time. They then managed to kick the first 2 of the final quarter as well to really extend it. Gold Coast did get a couple back, but then Geelong answered both times very quickly. So it basically ends up being not a massive win, but 24 points in a really low-scoring game. Makes it look like it was controlled completely by Geelong, which isn't exactly the case. At certain points of this game, it could have gone either way. I think a major factor for Gold Coast here is some of their stars. They had quite a few stars that did not play up to their normal standards, and that's probably a major reason why they struggled. If we look at some of the numbers in this one, you're going to see a lot of stoppages. Geelong had a lot of the football, almost plus 100 disposals. They really did control the football and the ground quite well. They had it in their forward half plus 5%, so 52 to 47%. Inside 50s, 55 to 51, so not a massive difference in favour of Geelong, but plus 4. They did control that. Contested footy plus 20. As I said, uncontested footy was massively in favour of Geelong. As soon as they had that side of the game, it was pretty much all she wrote. Gold Coast couldn't defend against the uncontested football of Geelong in this one. Geelong looked after the ball a little bit better than Gold Coast as well. Wet game, there's going to be a lot of intercepts. So the numbers were quite high, but Geelong did it slightly better in that regard in just raw numbers. We'll get to the scoring from that in a minute. Clearances dead level, but really high, 50 apiece. Obviously, as I said, there was a lot of stoppages, especially in the first half. Shots on goal. Gold Coast just managed 12 shots on goal for the game. Geelong had 18. So it was low scoring, but it was also low shots. It wasn't inefficiency in front of goal. It was just the fact that both teams really struggled to create opportunities to score in this game. It was wet. It was heavily contested, and that's kind of the reason. Expected score plus 19 roughly for Geelong, so not too dissimilar from the actual final score, as you would expect. Wet weather, transition game was basically non-existent. Both teams looked pretty poor in most numbers compared to their normal and towards the AFL average. But you kind of expect that in a really wet game like this that was heavily contested for a lot of the time, and then when it wasn't, it was uncontested in Geelong's favour, and they just kind of looked after the ball and didn't try to move the ball that fast. They just controlled it. Score sources from the stoppage is where Geelong dominated this one, 28-9, 4 goals, 4-1, 3. That's basically the difference in this game. Whereas turnover was 27 apiece. So even though it was 50 clearances each for both teams, no team dominated the clearance game. It was the scoring from stoppage that Geelong did the work. Defensive half was pretty similar, 16-15, and forward half is where Geelong did their work, 39-22. So forward half and stoppage is Geelong's go-to in this match against Gold Coast, and they end up controlling the match and controlling the scoreboard, which gives them a really important win. Gold Coast, they suffer back-to-back losses heading into the bye, which is not ideal for them, but it's not the end of the world. You look at the team ratings, that is Gold Coast's worst team rating of the year. It is wet weather football, so you kind of forgive it in that sense. Just 36.29 though is very, very low. Geelong 46.3 is a really good number. They'll be happy with a plus 10 game in that regard. They dominated this one in most facets, and you see it as only a 24-point win, but that's all they needed to do. And when you consider the fact that Jeremy Cameron had very little say in this game, it's another really positive sign. If we look at some of the numbers out there for this game, in terms of players, Tyson Stengel was the difference in the forward line, 4 goals from 11 touches. Massive game, only person on the field to kick multiple goals, and he got 4 of them. So really big game from him. Max Holmes had 40 touches in wet weather, 10 clearances, 861 metres gained. He did a lot in this match. As you'd expect, high tackle numbers, Matt Rowell 11, Mark O'Connor 10, clearance numbers, there was 50 per team, so there's going to be some big ones here. Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson 10 apiece, and 10 for Max Holmes. Noah Anderson well down on his best. He had just 19 touches. They're really struggling to get too much out of Sam Flanders in that forward line. He had about 5 or 10 good minutes last week against Fremantle, but outside of that, he's really struggling to have an impact across a game at the moment, and they got to find a way to get him involved a bit more, I think. Looking at best players for Geelong, 10 goes to Max Holmes, he was outstanding. 8 to Tom Atkins, 6 Mark O'Connor, 4 for Jack Henry, and Tyson Stengel unluckily only gets 2. For Gold Coast, it went Matt Rowell 5. Jared Witts was best ruckman on the ground, I think, 4. Miller gets 3. Fiorini gets 2, and Joel Jeffrey gets the 1. Brownlow votes, I think 3 has to go to Max Holmes. He was outstanding. 40 touches in the wet is an incredibly good effort. He's been in some fine form over the last few weeks. Tyson Stengel gets the 2. He kicked 4 goals. I think the umpires will reward that with some votes. And Matt Rowell was Gold Coast's best player. He gets the 1. That's everything for that game. We'll move on to the Saturday night fixture. It was GWS v Port Adelaide at Manuka, and what is going on with the Giants? They are falling to pieces very quickly at the moment. They lose this one by 16 points, and to be honest, Port Adelaide deserved the win. Port Adelaide kicked the first couple. It was pretty close most of the way through. Just 2-point lead for Port Adelaide at quarter time. Half time it was 3-point lead to GWS, but then Port kicked the first of the second half early, and then GWS only managed 1 goal in the second half, which was the first goal of the last quarter. It was a bit of a stalemate for a big chunk of that second half. Like, there was 1 goal kicked in the third quarter, but Port Adelaide kicked the last 3 of the match and end up winning it by 16 points. Not dominant win by any stretch of the imagination, but it does get their second half of the season coming out of the bye, just a little bit of confidence heading towards the rest of their season. They've got a long way to come back, but this does give them a little bit of hope that they can get an away win. They've been, well, I was going to say to Sydney, this was ACT, not technically New South Wales, but they've played both the Sydney teams away and beat them both, so that's a little interesting stat for you this season. Really good performance in the end. They did what they needed to, and they get the win. We look at some of the team stats for this game. Disposal count ended up pretty much dead similar. Ball use was better by GWS in terms of disposal efficiency, but that does not always mean much because Port Adelaide moved the ball a lot better. +2 inside 50s for Port Adelaide, so not massive difference there. If you look at intercepts, once again, really high number. 79 intercepts for Port Adelaide, 77 for GWS. It's well above average for both teams. Marks, pretty similar numbers to the norm. Intercept marks, pretty similar. Shots on goal, though, 24-16. Port Adelaide peppered the goals, +8 shots for the match. And as you'd expect, they are the expected score winners in this one as well by about 15 points. So probably the rightful winners looking at most numbers. If you look at the team ratings, my team ratings for this one, both teams rated pretty low, 42.49 for GWS, 42.6 for Port Adelaide. So it suggests it's a pretty close game, and it was just those shot numbers certainly late in the game that overpowered the Giants. In terms of transition, there was not much of it in this game that was worth writing home about. GWS typically are a really good transitioning team. They've kind of lost it over the last couple of weeks, and this week especially. I know conditions weren't ideal for good ball movement, good transition, but Port Adelaide certainly across the board were better at chaining, going from defensive 50 to forward 50, going defensive half to forward half, or to forward 50, and converting them into scores and shots. Also, Port Adelaide controlled that side of the game. It was turnover scoring in the end, 35-22, where Port Adelaide did really well. Stoppage scoring was pretty similar for both teams. And it was forward half, which in these sort of conditions you expect the forward half scoring to be the difference. And that was what happened, 7-7, 49 for Port Adelaide, just 5-5, 35 for GWS. In the end, yeah, controlled the important moments and the important part of the game did Port Adelaide, and they get the 4 points for it. Looking at some players in this one, some of the player stats, that is, 3 multiple goal kickers, Willie Rioli the only one for Port Adelaide, Riccardi and Jesse Hogan both kicked 2 for GWS. Disposal numbers, quite high numbers, as there usually is for both of these teams. Butters 32, 31 Tom Green, 30 for Lockie Ash, 28 for Connor Rose. I don't know if there's anything else too exciting. 12 clearances, Zach Butters, 11 for Tom Green, so both of them had big clearance numbers. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything too exciting. You'll notice best players for GWS, there's a lot of defenders and key defenders in there, which is a sign that perhaps they had the ball on the back foot a lot of the time. But the winning team MVP votes, Zach Butters 10, he was best on ground. Miles Bergman gets 8, Connor Rose 6, Willem Drew gets the 4, and Asava Radaglia comes back into the team and gets 2 with his best game. I was almost about to say of his career. That's a big statement, but definitely of this season. On the other side of the fence, GWS, Sam Taylor was outstanding in the intercept game. Across this game, he had 16 intercepts for the match, was outstanding. He was GWS's best player. Tom Green gets 4 votes. Jack Buckley gets 3, so another key defender. He had 11 intercepts. Meanwhile, if we go back to Sava, he had 12. Then Lockie Ash gets 2 for his high ball use. Harry Himmelberg gets the 1. Brownlow votes, I think 3 has to go to Butters. I think Rose gets the 2. And Tom Green sneaks in for 1. There's probably a couple other players that could get votes in this one. Lockie Ash had plenty of it, and any of those key defenders. Sam Taylor especially maybe deserves votes. He was played he's had 2 really good intercept games this year. This is one of them, and the other big one was against Collingwood. So he was the best key defender in the competition a couple of years ago. Maybe lost that last year when he missed quite a few games. He's certainly in the conversation. I don't think he has been number 1 key defender this season, but he's certainly in the conversation at least. So that's everything from that game, and that is Saturday wrapped up. We'll move into Sunday football. And boy, oh boy, this will go down as the biggest stinker, I reckon, of the year. It was a tough watch. No offence to both teams, but it was so bad. Kangaroos get the win somehow, 9-8-62. West Coast, 6 goals, 16-52. They lose it by 10 points. North Melbourne play 1 quarter of football and get the win. Team ratings, they got a 44.84, did the Kangaroos in the end. Somehow. Eagles 40.02, but this was a tough watch. There's no doubt about it. We look at the scoring throughout the match. So Kangaroos actually started okay in this. 3 goals, 2-20 to 0-5 at quarter time. West Coast were 1 goal 8 at half time, trailing by 7 points. In the third quarter, they finally managed to start kicking straight. After being 1 goal 12, I think, at one point, they were 5-14 at 3-quarter time, led by 11 points. But the Kangaroos decided to start actually playing and hitting targets and converted their opportunities. They had 4 goals 5 in that final quarter to 1 goal 2. West Coast let this one go, though. All they needed to do was kick semi-straight, and they would have been out in front by 5-6 goals going into that last quarter, and that might have been enough to hold on for the win. But as it stands, the Kangaroos get the win after selling their home game over to WA. So they'll be pretty happy with that side of things, at least, even if their performance wasn't spectacular. They had a lot more of the football, there's no doubt about it, but that doesn't mean that they were the better team. Disposal efficiency wise, North Melbourne did look after the ball in that regard a lot better. Inside 50s were plus 22 to West Coast, and I'm pretty sure, I don't have exact numbers but at 3-quarter time those numbers were well over plus 22. North Melbourne did win the inside 50s in that last quarter, so that's just a sign of where the football was. And like forward half territory battle, it was up West Coast end. 57% of this game, Kangaroos had a lot of the football, but they just did nothing with it for so much of this game, and they turned it over so much. 75 intercepts for West Coast, 59 for the Kangaroos. North Melbourne did dominate the clearance game, but they just turned it over way too much. I said in my post-game TikTok, I do post-game thoughts on every single match of the season over on TikTok. Some go live onto the YouTube shorts, some on Instagram Reels sometimes. But I said after this one that if North Melbourne had played anyone else, they would have been 100 points down at 3-quarter time, just about this weekend. Even against Richmond, I reckon they would have been 10 goals down. They were so bad. They just turned it over so much. Yes, they got hands on the ball, they were getting clearances, but they were just doing useless, poor kicking, poor disposal, poor decision making, and they were lucky they were playing West Coast, is basically the long and the short of it. West Coast actually had 2 more shots than North Melbourne in this game, 25-23. Expected score does actually go North Melbourne's way, though, so they obviously did have some easier shots than West Coast, but just wasteful first 3 quarters first 2.5 quarters from West Coast. They could have been way out in front, and that might have been enough to scare off and finish the Kangaroos a bit earlier, which they left the Kangaroos in the game, and that was the difference. Transition wise, West Coast transitioned the ball pretty well. Like, the numbers across the board are pretty solid, pretty comparable to where they are at their best. Whereas North Melbourne were so low in all the numbers. West Coast beat them in chain to score, defensive 50 to forward 50, D50 to score, defensive half to forward 50, and also defensive half to score. So across the board, whitewash West Coast. Transition the ball so much better than North Melbourne here. which isn't a surprise when we look at the turnover numbers from North Melbourne. Stoppage scoring is where North Melbourne did all their damage. 5 goals 4 to 1-1. As we said, North Melbourne did dominate the stoppages. West Coast that was their biggest issue here. They couldn't get a clearance. And that was a big problem. Turnover game, though. 5 goals 13 for West Coast. That could have been massive. Even if that's, 10 goals 8. They win this game comfortably. But 5-13-43 to 3-4-22. Defensive half was 3-2-20 for North Melbourne. Somehow outscore them, West Coast, even though they transitioned better. 2 goals 7 is the reason why. Forward half 36 to 33. And North Melbourne, who's one of the high-scoring teams from centre bounce, certainly early parts of this season they were, 1 goal straight to 0-0. So there's not much scoring from the centre bounce in this game. Move into some of the best players and some of the big numbers that were in this game. Fantasy and Supercoach scoring-wise, North Melbourne dominated this one. As we said, they had plenty of the ball, but they just did nothing with it for big chunks of this game. Goal kicking wise, Paul Curtis kicked 3. Cam Zerha kicked 2 in that final quarter. He was clutch. Jai Simpkin got 2. Jack Williams for West Coast got 2. Disposal numbers, 35 Colby McKercher, 30 Tom Powell, 29 Caleb Daniel, 28 for Harry Sheasel. West Coast highest ball winner was Liam Duggan with 23. No massive tackle numbers clearance wise. Tristan Cherry got 10. Harry Sheasel 2 goal assists. Brady Howe also 2 goal assists. So nothing too exciting there. MVP vote wise, we've got for the winning team Tristan Xerri. I think he was outstanding. He gets 10. I think he was best on ground in all honesty. 8 for Colby McKercher for 35 touches. Caleb Daniel 6. Harry Sheasel 4. Jai Simpkin gets the 2. He kicked the ceiling goal in the end. On the other side of the fence, West Coast, Liam Baker 5, Liam Duggan 4, Elijah Hewitt 3, Harry Edwards 2, and Brady Howe gets the 1. The votes for this game, I don't know what the umpires are going to see. They might give it to all the ball winners for Kangaroos. I went Colby McKercher 3. He had 35 touches. I think the umpires will see that. Elijah Hewitt gets 2. I don't know if that's actually true or not. Tristan Cherry gets 1. There's probably 8 or 9 Kangaroos that hypothetically could get votes in this game. Depends how the umpires see it. Whereas there's not that many from West Coast. Even though they were in the game, they were probably a better team for big chunks of this game. They just weren't big ball winners, and whether the umpires see that or not, I don't know. But that's that game. We've got one more from Sunday before we jump into the Monday game after that. So this was a Sunday night footy and another weird sort of game, in all honesty. It was Carlton, Essendon, MCG, traditional King's Birthday Eve Sunday night game. Carlton win it by 8 points, 11-12, 78, 11-4, 70. The damage was done in the first quarter. The Bombers came back after that. Second week in a row that the Bombers haven't turned up till quarter time. They did it against Brisbane and it cost them in a close one there. And then they've done it again here where they conceded the first 4 goals of the match and 6 out of the first 7 in that first quarter. Or ended up conceding 7 of the first 8 goals in actual fact. 33 points down at quarter time were the Dons, but they fought their way back, especially in that second half. They kicked, I think, the first 4 of the second half. Maybe the first 3. Anyway, they really started to come back into the game. Just 11 points down at 3-quarter time. They never hit the front, but they certainly got close, getting it under 10 points with probably 6-7 minutes to go. Sorry about that light. Can't do much about it though. Plus, got within 10, 6 minutes to go, had their chances, but in the end, Carlton holds on, gets the 8-point win. Massive win for Carlton. They have not the toughest run over the next couple of weeks. There is a slight possibility that they get themselves back into finals contention. I think they got West Coast and North Melbourne over the next couple weeks. They also have some games against And then they've got, I can't remember who after that, but maybe Port Adelaide and then Collingwood. So there's definitely some winnable games coming up for them. There's a possibility that in 3 weeks' time they've got a positive win-loss record, and all of a sudden 2025 might not be ruined for them just yet. They're not playing great football, but they get the win here, and that's all they needed. Team rating-wise, they did rate above Essendon, 46.44 for Carlton, 41.77 for the Bombers. So they were the better team. Essendon were just very efficient going forward. 11 goals, 470. If we look at some of the team stats in this game and where the differences were between the two teams, it ended up being pretty close in disposal count, just +9 for Carlton. Forward half was actually in Essendon's and for slightly more than Carlton, not much difference, but slightly ahead. Inside 50s was just +1 for Carlton, so the numbers in those regards were very similar. Contested football was just +11 for Carlton as well. Intercept game was very, very high. 86 intercepts for Carlton is massive numbers, so Essendon did not look after the ball well. 76 intercepts for Essendon also suggests that Carlton didn't look after the ball that well. They're massive numbers, but Carlton +10 in that regard. We'll get to the scoring from that in a minute. Clearances were pretty level, 39 to 38. In the end, 28 shots for Carlton for just 11 goals is very poor efficiency. Meanwhile, 19 shots for the Bombers to kick 11 goals is pretty good efficiency. Expected score has Carlton winning this by about 4 to 5 goals. So Essendon did get a lot closer than perhaps a lot of stats suggest they should have, mainly because they were efficient when they went forward and they did take their opportunities, just like Adelaide, but unlike Adelaide, they couldn't quite get the win. Transition-wise, across the board, it's basically Carlton did transition the ball better, give themselves more opportunities, and that's why they had more shots. Scoring-wise, as we said, turnover numbers were massive. Carlton wasted their scoring from those turnovers, though. 7-9-51, whereas Essendon were 8 goals, 3-51. Stoppage numbers were pretty level for both teams, but scoring-wise, it was 27 to 19. Defensive half, though, scoring is Carlton's bread and butter in this game. 7-5-47, whereas Essendon were 4-1-25. Essendon did score 2 goals from centre bounce, whereas Carlton didn't score any, just 0-1. Not much scoring from centre bounce across the board this weekend. Very low scoring from centre bounce. I don't think there's been any team that has really scored that much. If we get all the numbers up, Hawthorn got 3-1 and then Essendon 2-0. No other team has multiple goals this weekend, and there's been 3 teams that have scored 0-0 from the centre bounce. So that is very low for AFL average. Is that where the football maybe has a fair bit to do with it? Repeat stoppages and stuff like that, but yeah, some very low scoring numbers from centre bounce this weekend. We look at some of the key player stats in this game. 2-metre Peter kicks 3 goals. He was good. 2 goals for Zach Williams, Jesse Motlop, Charlie Curnow, and Jade Gresham for Essendon. Disposal numbers, Sam Walsh and Nick Martin both had 32, 31 for Darcy Parish. He made a return and had plenty of the ball. He also had 10 clearances to lead the clearance tally in this match. Tackle numbers, Zach Merritt playing primarily forward, had a bit of midfield time as well. Primarily back? Forward, whichever end he played at. I've lost the plot there and forgotten all about my numbers and my stats and everything from this weekend. But, yes. Anyway, that's neither here or there. He played about 25% midfield time, I think. So, a bit down on his usual numbers. They've been doing that a little bit lately. Don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for them, but he's their best midfielder. So, maybe midfield time is where he should be. I'm not their coach, though, so what would I know? Other than that, I don't know what else to say about this game. We'll jump into MVP votes. For the winning team, Carlton, Tom De Koning had a lot of the football. He was very important in their win. What do you have? 23 touches and a goal with 29 hit-outs, 7 clearances. So he was good. Sam Walsh gets the 8. George Hewitt gets 6. He's been fantastic this season. He had 29 touches, 9 tackles. He was really good. Adam Cerra gets 4. Ollie Hollands gets 2 for the Bombers. Nick Martin was clearly their best. He's had a really good 5-week stretch. Playing over the last 5 weeks, a lot of forward time, but this one game he played forward in the first quarter, rotated back for most of the rest of the game due to, I think, that their slow start. They made the decision that he was going back, and it did work well. He has been very good forward, though, this year so far. Jai Caldwell, 4 votes. Andy McGrath was really good as a intercept player in this one, 3. Will Setterfield, 2. And Jade Gresham gets the 1. Brownlow votes could go to a lot of different players here. I've gone George Hewitt, 3. Tom De Koning, 2. Nick Martin, 1. There's a lot of players in contention, though, for those votes. Sam Walsh, Darcy Parish, maybe. As I said, George Hewitt gets votes. Blake Acres, Nick Martin, Sam Doherty, Jai Caldwell. Like, all these players could be getting votes, so there's plenty of opportunities that the umpires could go. It's not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination who will get the votes here. We'll jump into the last game in a moment. It will switch to dark and go nighttime in the background because that game hasn't been yet, but we'll continue very soon. Alrighty then, we've fast forwarded a few hours and the final game of the round has been complete. It was Melbourne Collingwood at the MCG and it ended up being an absolute classic. Collingwood hold off the Demons by 1 point in a bit of a thrilling finish. I don't know if it was an all-time classic game, certainly not skills-wise, but it was certainly entertaining. The Demons were in it all day long. They came with a plan to win it, and they executed that plan really, really well. From start to finish, basically. In the end, though, Collingwood just held on. There's a lot of story points from the game. Obviously, the game has literally finished less than an hour ago. It's about 40 minutes since the game finished. So, I've still got to rewatch, and I've got to do a lot more final reconciliation on the match. But these are my post-game thoughts. See how it stacks. Some of these MVP votes will change. The Brownlow votes probably won't change because I tend to stick with what I think straight after the game for Brownlow. But MVP could change. Ratings could change for teams and players. Slightly, not massively though. Anyway, this game, it was close all day. Collingwood kicked out by 20 points in the third quarter. That was the biggest margin of the match. Other than that, it was really close. Both teams. Collingwood had that dominant, well, I won't say dominant, but controlling period late in the second, early in the third, and then vice versa. Melbourne late in the third, early in the fourth were really good. Certainly putting some scores on the board and putting some pressure on. But Collingwood just managed to do it. Dan McStay kicked a goal with about still 10 minutes to go in the match to put Collingwood in front, and they held on from there. Heavy dominated by defence. Both teams' defenders played really well, especially Collingwood's. Melbourne dominated the centre ball, the clearances, centre clearances, stoppage clearances. We'll look at some of the numbers here. Clearance-wise, it was 39-29 in favour of Melbourne, 16-7, so plus 9 in centre clearances. They destroyed Collingwood in that all day, executed it really, really well. The tag on Nick Dacos really had a massive effect on him. He had little impact in the first 3 quarters. Granted, I think there was a lot of holding in those first couple of quarters that was got away with, and then they evened it up late in the game by giving him a few free kicks. If they had have maybe paid some early, it might have changed things. But as it stands, yeah, that's only on my first watch. Things might change when I rewatch this game. Yeah, so they dominated the clearances. They dominated the contested football. Absolutely dominated contested football. Plus 28 in that area, Melbourne. But Collingwood, when they had the ball, just controlled it uncontested. Plus 70-odd uncontested football in this game for Collingwood. Plus 40-odd marks. They just dominated that sort of area of the game. Melbourne really, really good at the contested mark game. But it was all to no avail in the end. They put up a great fight. Team rating says 42.07. I think they were a lot better than that. Collingwood 47.43. They were a lot worse than that. Melbourne suffocated the Collingwood game style, especially the way Melbourne attacked was really good. They moved the ball fast and long, and that normally works for Collingwood, but it put some of their defenders under the pump, and they made some mistakes. And vice versa, Melbourne defended really well, did not allow Collingwood to really do that slingshot offense that they normally do. So things worked out well for Melbourne in a lot of ways here, except for on the scoreboard. +9 inside 50s. I think that's an interesting stat. I don't have numbers yet on actual field precision percentages, but I would say Collingwood probably a little bit more even in that than the inside 50 count. Melbourne did have a lot of repeats, but you look at the scoreboard as well. 10-11 for Melbourne, another team that kicked less efficiently at goals and losing the game. Collingwood were very good in that regard, 11-6, 72. Some key players in this game, obviously Fritsch. He was huge in that last quarter, especially. Since getting dropped, he's come back into the team and been really good. He had 3 goals in this one, 2 in the last quarter. Pickett was very effective up forward, as he always is. He only had the 15 touches this game, so a bit down on his normal numbers, but kicked 3 goals, and all of them were absolute crackers, including, I think, their last goal of the game he kicked. He was really good. Dan McStay was the only other multiple goal kicker. He kicked 2 for the match. Disposal-wise, Josh Dacos had 34 off the back flank. He was getting plenty of it all the way through this game. Clayton Oliver was really good with 30. Pendlebury 29. Petrarca 26. Jeremy Howe had 26 touches, as did Steele Sidebottom and Quainer had 25 each. So Collingwood did have plenty of the ball, most of that uncontested. Tackle numbers, Clayton Oliver, Ned Long, Jack Crisp all with 7. Clearance-wise, Clayton Oliver had 9. Nick Dacos still managed 8 clearances for this match, which is crazy when he was under the tight tag, only had 19 touches and a goal. But that last quarter, he was certainly effective enough. He kicked a goal, tackled hard. Metres gained, Howe led that with 582. I don't know if there's anything else that's too exciting. Interestingly enough, Melbourne dominated the contested marks through Petty, Melksham, May, Gawn, all these sort of players, and lots of players getting 1s. But Darcy Cameron managed 4 in this game, and a lot of them were off opposition kicks. He's very effective at getting back in the hull and taking those marks. He was very good again at that, and is the best part of his game. He's probably the best ruckman in the competition at doing that. Score involvements was led by Fritsch and Dacos with 7 apiece. Intercept possessions was insane by Jeremy Howe, 14 for the match. Led the game by a fair chunk. So a good performance from him. We'll jump into MVP votes for the winning team. Jeremy Howe, 10. So much intercept work. He was really good down back. Josh Dacos, 8. Jack Crisp gets the 6. Steele Sidebottom, 4. Isaac Quainer gets the 2. So quite a lot of old in there. But really, really good performance from the Collingwood backline, especially to keep Melbourne down to 71 when they were under the pump a lot of this game. Max Gawn gets the 5 for Melbourne. He was outstanding in the ruck. Petrarca, he tried his absolute heart out. He was fantastic in this game. He gets 4 votes. Clayton Oliver, as I said, 30 touches was great. Bailey Fritsch gets 2 votes. And Daniel Turner took some really good contested marks, had some really key moments in this match that I think were very important in keeping Melbourne alive at certain times. He only took 1 contested mark for the game, but he took a couple intercept marks as well. Anyway, really good performance from most of the Demons team. Brownlow votes, I went Josh Dacos 3. I think 34 touches or whatever he had will be well and truly noticed by the umpires. He was very good in this game. And he got the Best on Ground award after the match as well for the Neil Danaher award. Also, make sure you go give a donation to the MND fund. It's very important research that they do. Jeremy Howe gets the 2. I think he was absolutely outstanding in that back line. I doubt the umpires noticed it, but maybe they did. He was a very important player for Collingwood in this one. And Clayton Oliver It could go to him, it could go to Gawn, it could go to Petrarca. They all are well and truly in the vote consideration for this game. Those three were by far Melbourne's best players on the ground and very important in this game. But I've gone Clayton Oliver for one vote. So that's all 8 games now reviewed. We jump into how my tips went on the weekend. Bulldogs, we started poorly. They came out of the bye and weren't great at all. They lost. Adelaide got the win over Brisbane. Didn't quite win by 17 points, but they got the win. Sydney beat Richmond by a bit more than 8 points. Geelong got the win over Gold Coast by a pretty similar margin to that. GWS, they were the big disappointment of the weekend. They lost to Port Adelaide on Saturday night. West Coast were the one that I'm most disappointed about because I think they deserved to win in a lot of ways, but they didn't. So I got that one wrong as well. Carlton, they got the win last night over the Bombers, not by that much, and same with Collingwood beating Melbourne today, but not by that much. So we went 5 of 8, not a great week. Could have been worse, could have been better. 73 out of 113 for the year. So not spectacular, but that is how it is. We'll jump into the Brownlow leaderboard after this round. Jordan Dawson stays out in front. He's on 18 votes. Bailey Smith on 16. Andrew Brayshaw sitting on 14 with Caleb Sarong. So the Fremantle duo sitting on 14 each, maybe taking votes off each other this season so far. Max Holmes, 14 as well. So 2 Geelong players up in the top 5 as well. Jai Newcomb's been really good this year. He's on 14. Maxi Gawn, 14. So if he does poll votes here today, maybe he will be in that Brownlow race. Hugh McCluggage, 13. Lockie Neal, 13. Nick Dacos, 13. And Connor Rose on 13. And that wraps up the Brownlow leaderboard. The last thing to look at here is our MVP leaderboard after round 13. Bailey Smith didn't play this week, but he holds on to the lead on 70 votes. Tristan Cherry on 67.5. Max Gawn right behind him on 67. So a couple big ruckmen playing outstanding football, both vying for that number 1 Ruck of the Year award. Hugh McCluggage, 65.5. Brayshaw, 63. Noah Anderson also on 63. Still side bottom and Matt Rowell both on 60. Still side bottom. What a resurgence this year has been. 58 for Connor Rose, 57 for Jordan Dawson, then 3 players on 54. They are Nick Dacos, Tom Green and Jack Sinclair. And then 53 votes each for Caleb Sarong and Maxi Holmes. That is your 2025 MVP leaderboard after round 13. Some big weeks of football coming up. We've still got another 3 weeks of bye football to come. We've got some, if you head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that noti bell, and make sure you check out the videos coming up this week. We're going to have 4 more mid-season reviews coming up this week in over the next 4 or 5 days. They're going to be Collingwood, Gold Coast, Sydney and Richmond. You're not going to want to miss any of them. There's going to be plenty to talk about for each of those 4 teams. So Collingwood will be out on Wednesday, Gold Coast will be out on Friday, and then Sydney Saturday, Richmond Sunday. Also, there's plenty of mid-season reviews already up. This week was St Kilda Fremantle. I think they were very good videos, so go check them out. In all honesty, I really liked them, and I think there's plenty of good information in there. We go into the stats, the numbers, and everything you need to know about how each team is going at the mid-season mark of this season. Don't forget to like this video if you're on YouTube, or if you're on the other ones, don't forget to rate the podcast. Hit that subscribe/follow button, and leave a comment below to let me know what you think of this week of football. It was a big weekend. Some big, important matches. There's a lot more big, important matches coming up this week. The next podcast, previewing all the round 14 action, will be live on the channel Thursday morning, so don't miss that. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch us on the next one.